Well, hello, good evening, folks. I'm sorry I can't be with you tonight as we look at Revelation 17. I don't know if you know anything about internet culture, but I wonder if you've come across this meme. And if you don't know what a meme is, don't worry. It's a funny picture, and here's a funny picture. It's called the distracted boyfriend meme. And there you can see there is the boyfriend looking over his shoulder in that shocking way as his girlfriend is appalled because his eyes are being drawn after another woman. And the thing is with this meme is you can add different words to it. So for instance, there we go. There's you. You're supposed to be with chores, doing chores, but you're actually watching cat videos. And isn't that so true to life? Here's another one. Me wanting takeaway when I have food in the fridge. I don't know if you find that in your life, but isn't it so tempting to think I could just do with a nice curry or something like that when you've got food in the house, but you're just being lazy? Well, what about you? Is there another sense or any sense at all in which actually you are like this distracted boyfriend? What turns your gaze? What captures your attention and draws you away from what you have towards what you don't have? And how does that apply to you, particularly when we think about Jesus and following him? When it comes to Jesus Christ, are you happy with him? Are you happy with him as Lord of your life? Or actually, are you looking over your shoulder? Do you feel perhaps that there are better options out there or things in the world which you would prefer? Do you think, I wouldn't mind a bit of that instead? Actually, maybe a woman in a red dress, maybe something else. There might be many things which draw our gaze. I'd be really amazed if any of us who follow Jesus have never felt this way, never felt this conflict between wanting to follow Jesus and the things that we find in the world that it offers us. It might be you're someone who's not put your faith in Jesus, and so this doesn't apply for you in quite that way. But let me tell you, if you decide to follow him, as we pray you would, you can't have your cake and eat it. Saying yes to him will mean saying no to sin. So you will feel torn. There will be temptation and struggle as you try to stay on course instead of turning away. And the reason for that, we see in our chapter tonight, the reason for that in the Bible is that the world is doing her best to seduce us. That's what we're going to see in Revelation chapter 17 tonight. We're going to see another woman in a red dress, like the one in this meme, a woman who's very attractive, a woman who makes it her business to lure people to herself, to drink her wine, a woman who seems to offer so much, a woman who symbolizes something at work in the world. And once again, Revelation will be revealing reality to us. It's not called confusion because it's not designed to confuse us. It's called revelation because it's designed to reveal the truth, what is unseen behind appearances. And tonight, we are going to see the world unmasked and revealed. What Revelation is going to show us is that the seductive world that charms us and beckons us and sucks us in is not only dangerous, it's doomed. Tonight we've got 2 points as we look through the text. First of all, Babylon the Great, verses 1 to 6. We'll spend most of our time on that. And then afterwards, Babylon's fate from verse 7 onwards, her fate at the hands of the beast. But firstly, let's get our bearings with Babylon the Great and pick it up at verse 1, if you've got a Bible handy, of chapter 17. We get a new section here in Revelation 17:1. It says, one of the 7 angels who had the 7 bowls came and said to me, come, I will show you the punishment of the great prostitute who sits by many waters. This is a new section. We know that because we've just finished a set of 7 Remember, the sets of sevens run through history in 7 symbolic stages, each cartooning reality for us in a different way. And what we've had so far is this. I'll show you this. I have a diagram on this, actually. So the structure of Revelation, which is really good to know. And it's going to be, let me get my mouse back on here, a series of sevens which are overlapping. So here you go. These are the series of 7. We have the introduction and the 7 letters. Then we have the 7 seals, which end with Jesus's return in chapter 7, after that vision of him in the throne room, Jesus being the lamb who was slain, taking the scroll and opening it, bringing about God's plan for history. Then we get another angle on those same events through the 7 trumpets, ending with his return. Then the 7 beasts, well, the 7 visions, which is called the section, I've called it there, the section of the beasts, because you have those 2 beasts in it. And we've just had that a couple of weeks ago. Then last time we had chapters 15 and 16, the 7 bowls ending in Jesus's return. And now we're starting a new section. The angel is saying, come, I will show you Babylon's punishment, Babylon's fall. And that's the theme of the section we're going to look through. It's going to end in the same place. It's going to show us, cartooned, the church age and the return of Jesus. And we know, if you ever want proof that Revelation isn't a chronological string of events, 17:1 is your verse, because Babylon falls in the previous chapter. Back in 16, verse 19, Babylon is given the cup of wine of the fury of God's wrath. Babylon falls. And yet now we're stepping back to see Babylon again, to see Babylon in action before and during and after her fall. And that's what's happening for us in this section. It shows us, verse 1, the punishment of the great prostitute, the condemnation of this character. And that's what we're going to see. And immediately the angel tells us things about her. Verse 2, with her, the kings of the earth committed adultery, and the inhabitants of the earth were intoxicated with the wine of her adulteries. Immediately you get some repeated language there, don't you? Prostitute, adultery, intoxicated. This is not in the realm of the wholesome sexuality between a husband and wife in a marriage. This is dodgy. This is a language which conjures up images of dodgy nightclubs in the red light district, doesn't it? With people getting drunk and up to no good and all sorts of lurid stuff going on. Contrary to popular belief, the Bible doesn't pretend that the world is all sunshine and that stuff doesn't exist. No, it's very realistic. It recognizes these things are a reality in our world, and they seem to be embodied in this woman. And it should be obvious she's a cartoon, she's not a literal woman. Verse 2, we're told the kings of the earth, human rulers, are in bed with her. And the inhabitants of the earth, that's normal people, are getting drunk on her wine, which doesn't seem to be literal wine, it's the wine of her adulteries. She is the embodiment of sexual sin. And the emphasis on sexual immorality here is massive. It's even clearer in the original because the word for prostitute there in verse 1 is related to the word for commit adultery in verse 2. So to show the link, you could translate it, the condemnation of the great prostitute who sits by many waters. With her, the kings of the earth prostituted, and the inhabitants of the earth were intoxicated with the wine of her prostitutions. It's a similar set of related terms, and they're all actually connected to our word pornography, because what pornography means is the graphe, the drawing of pornai, which means prostitutes. And that's the term for prostitute here. What's the angel telling us is that there is someone at work seducing us, someone luring humanity into sin, alluring its leaders, intoxicating its people. And we see her in verse 3. Have a look. Then the angel carried me away in the spirit into a desert. There I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast that was covered with blasphemous names and had 7 heads and 10 horns. The woman was dressed in purple and scarlet, and was glittering with gold, precious stones, and pearls. She held a golden cup in her hand, filled with abominable things, and the filth of her adulteries. The name written on her forehead was a mystery: Babylon the Great, the mother of prostitutes and of the abominations of the earth. I saw that the woman was drunk with the blood of God's people, the blood of those who bore testimony to Jesus. It's quite an arresting image, isn't it? I wonder what jumps out to you. Firstly, you might wonder why John is in the desert at the start there. Well, perhaps you remember we've seen the desert before in Revelation, and actually we've seen another woman in a desert in Revelation. She was in the desert. She represented God's people, and her time in the desert was her time of being attacked by Satan but protected by God. So in other words, to be in the desert was for the church age. It was for God's people to be suffering and under attack after the victory of Jesus on the cross, to be in that in-between time where suffering and trials are ongoing. And we will see soon another city cartooned as a woman. We will see the New Jerusalem prepared as a bride for Christ. Here we have in the desert the complete opposite, the prostitute. Verse 3 shows us she's not alone. She is sitting on a scarlet beast that was covered with blasphemous names. This is the same beast we saw in chapter 13. We know that because it has the same number of heads and horns. It's red like the dragon was, showing its satanic character. And back in 13, we saw this beast as a cartoon of the powers that be, oppressive governments, rulers under the influence of Satan. And it seems that this woman is on the same team. She's riding Satan's beast. She's in league with him. But there's also an important difference between her and the beast. An important difference, because verse 3, the beast is hideous. It's covered in blasphemies and multiple heads. It's scary and repellent to imagine. But verse 4, the woman is very well dressed. Verse 4, the woman was dressed in purple and scarlet and was glittering with gold, precious stones, and pearls. The similarities are, well, they're both wearing or looking red. They're both satanic. They're both involved in the shedding of the blood of the saints, verse 6. But there's a difference. Whereas the beast represents anti-Jesus oppression, the woman represents anti-Jesus seduction. One writer, Vern Poythress, puts this really brilliantly. He says, the beast stands for persecuting power. The woman stands for seductive luxury. The beast gets you to stop following Jesus because you want to avoid pain. The woman gets you to stop following Jesus because you want pleasure, and she's selling it. That's the difference. I wonder which you're more vulnerable to. You might have heard of the carrot and the stick. In this scenario, the beast is the stick. It's the monstrous human powers that persecute you and beat you up. But Satan has other tricks up his sleeve too. If he can't beat you up with the beast, he'll get you with the carrot of the prostitute. The woman's not threatening, remember. In fact, she's very attractive. She's a prostitute. She's sexually available. She's no doubt dressed attractively, provocatively. She's got wonderful clothes on, colors of purple and scarlet, colors of luxury and royalty, colors associated with power. She's got pearls. She looks $1 million. She offers wealth and pleasure, and she offers this through a cup. Verse 4, she held a golden cup in her hand, filled with abominable things and the filth of her adulteries. It looks so good on the outside. It's gold, it's shiny, it's precious, but on the inside, it's filthy. She offers to fulfill your darkest desires. She wants to give you what you want. It's like her. The cup is both repellent, it's filthy, it's abominable, but it's also attractive. It's gold and it's filthy. And just as God's people had his name, his seal on them, so she has her name on her. Verse 5, the name written on her forehead was a mystery. Mystery doesn't mean a secret code here. It just means a secret revealed, something you found out because you've been told. And here is the secret of who she is: Babylon the Great, the mother of prostitutes and of the abominations of the earth. Like all of John's imagery, this has its roots in the Old Testament. This is not literal Babylon, obviously, because the ancient city of Babylon, well, it's presently in ruins, and in John's day, it was not a major player on the world stage, but this is figuratively Babylon. And what was Babylon? What was Babylon in the Old Testament? What did it stand for? It was the epitome of an earthly civilization in rebellion against God. Genesis 11, the Tower of Babel, is Babylon. It's an attempt for humanity to come together and defy God by building a tower up to the heavens to make a name for themselves. Babylon in Daniel and the prophets is a literal great power that conquered Jerusalem, but it's also a city linked to pride and rebellion against God. Nebuchadnezzar in Daniel 4, the king of Babylon, stands on the roof of his palace and says, "Is not this the great Babylon I have built as the royal residence by my mighty power and for the glory of my majesty?" That's Babylon the Great. Babylon means earthly civilization and power in rebellion against God. It's proud, it's sinful, it's rich, it's awesome, it's seductive. And John says, long after that ancient empire fell, Babylon is still here. The ongoing human project of civilization without God, that's Babylon. Babylon, as we find out in the last verse of the passage, is the great city that rules over the kings of the earth, verse 18. She is seated on many waters, verse 15, because the waters are peoples, multitudes, languages, and nations. This is the world city. For John's readers, they must immediately have thought of Rome. Rome was Babylon. It's the Roman Empire, the great city that rules over the earth and all its peoples. And they're not wrong, are they? Rome was Babylon. Peter even calls Rome Babylon in 1 Peter at the end. But Rome does not exhaust Babylon. Babylon is a bigger category, of which Rome is just one expression. Babylon, as we saw last time, only falls properly with the return of Jesus, Bowl 7. So we know it's something ongoing in the church age. It is all empires. It is all fallen civilizations and cities. It was Rome. It is Beijing, London, New York, Sydney, Jakarta, Mumbai, Tokyo, Paris. Babylon is where we live now. It's the world. And Revelation is revealing to us that the world and the civilization we inhabit is not our friend. It's not spiritually neutral. Actually, it hates God and it loves wealth and pleasure. And she allures people into drinking her wine and giving in to their darkest desires. Verse 5. What is this wine? Filled with abominable things and the filth of her adulteries. The language of abominations is used of idol worship a lot in the Old Testament, which confusingly is often described as spiritual adultery, like in Hosea. So this is idolatry, but it's also literal adultery too, literal sexual immorality, because these two things go together. At the start of Revelation, one of the 7 churches, the church in Thyatira, is warned about Jezebel misleading people into both sexual immorality and food sacrificed to idols. The two go together, sexual sin and false worship, with a twist of worldly wealth to boot. That's what's in the cup that she's offering you. That's what's on the menu. It's a powerful cocktail. As we pause here, I wonder, can you recognize Babylon from your own experience? Have you come across her? Have you seen her? Have you walked in her streets? Have you met people drunk on her wine? Have you tasted what she offers? Is she calling out to you and holding out that cup for you to drink from? Can you recognize in our world, cities, civilizations, culture that is anti-God and seeks to work against him by giving you what you want? Pleasure, wealth, free sex, idolatry. It's all available. It's right there if you want to go and drink it. I don't know if you ever go on newspaper websites. Maybe you come across an interesting story and it takes you through to the daily whatever. And as you scroll down the page, there are all sorts of adverts down the side. Adverts you can click on, adverts with beautiful people and headlines to pique your interest. The latest drama on Love Island. Look at how so-and-so lost weight. So-and-so sports tank top on the beach. Check out her after her boob job. And alongside all these little rabbit holes of lust that will take you down and down into more and more graphic stuff. There's the wealth adverts. Claim your PPI insurance. Start your business here. Win your jackpot here. And alongside the wealth, there's the idolatry. Meet your spiritual guide. Find these 10 steps to take you to happiness. Love yourself. It's all caught up together. Babylon's cup is massive online. In fact, I understand much of the internet's development was through porn. It was spurred on by that. But you know, Babylon's cup is also massive in real life. Think about what we do when we send kids and school leavers to university. The whole point of Freshers Week seems to be getting as drunk as you can, going to parties, having sexual adventures, and training to go and work for some great company in the city that will pay you loads of money and make you rich. When did we decide that was a good idea? When did someone sit down and decide that's what's going to make people happy? Who planned this? Well, no one planned it as such. It happens because Babylon is tempting us. Babylon is seducing us. Why are we having such massive issues with the Me Too movement and family breakdown? Do you think it might be something to do with the embrace of pleasure-seeking culture, drinking culture, sending generations of people off to party in Ibiza? Pleasure, fun, sex, money, the worship of the self. This is Babylon's cup. It's not complicated, is it? People aren't complicated on one level. We're precious and we're brilliant, but we're fallen and our hearts want sin. And young and old can fall prey. And Revelation is showing us there is a world out there. There is Babylon ready to give it to you if you want her cup. I remember when I used to work in a warehouse and someone used to bring in the daily tabloid paper and we used to enjoy having a laugh at the agony aunt's problem page, but my, oh my, there wasn't much else in that paper that you could look at as a Christian with good conscience. Okay, let me just skip pages. I can't look at that, can't look at that. Why is it like that? Well, the agenda is not just simply the conscious agenda of wanting to sell papers, and that's what people want to buy. There's a deeper spiritual agenda under the surface, isn't there? The world is trying to seduce you. Babylon is holding out her cup to you. She is offering you this day by day in adverts, through your phone, on TV, in society. in secret with your friends? Are you going to drink it? Are you going to be that distracted boyfriend looking over his shoulder, away from the girlfriend he has, all the time, looking back to Babylon? Revelation is drawing back the curtain to reveal the truth. The world looks very glamorous, but draw back the curtain. What is really there is a beast-riding, blood-drinking prostitute offering you filthy abominations in her cup. That's quite a sentence. What is really going on behind the glamorous appearance of the world is a beast-riding, blood-drinking prostitute offering you filthy abominations in her cup. Do you see that? And the thing about a prostitute is she doesn't love you. She doesn't have your interests at heart. She uses you as you use her. To flip it around to a male version, it might be like someone who uses you for sex. He doesn't really care. He's just using you. He'll offer you the world and he'll break your heart and he'll spit you out. That's what Babylon does. She's not helping you. She's offering you these things. But what she offers is both attractive, it's golden, and yet it's horrible. It's abominable. It's addictive. It looks so luscious and attractive, but drink that cup and you will wake up the next day feeling dirty. Worship the idols, you will come to loathe them. Get rich, it'll never be enough. It will become repellent to you, even as it attracts you. It will not satisfy. And like getting drunk, you'll start with a little and then have more and more and more and more until you've lost control and you can't stop. Sin is addictive. Babylon's wine is addictive. And that's what Babylon's cup does to people. Maybe you know what that feels like. Now, at this point, I don't know about you, but I feel ready to give up and head off into the woods, and we could form a better society. How does that sound? Do you think we could head off into the woods, maybe tomorrow or something like that, and we could leave Gosport and we could camp and we could set up a Christian community safe from Babylon, like the Amish? What do you think of that? Does that sound like a good idea? Is that the answer? Well, funnily enough, that's actually how monasteries began back in the 4th century. Christians like St. Anthony were getting so repelled by the sin in the world and in the church that they literally went off into the desert to go and be holy. Is that the answer? We'll have to think through that more carefully when we get on to chapter 18, where we get a command to come out of her, my people, come out of Babylon. And we'll have to think through carefully what that means. Does it mean total withdrawal? Does it mean cultural engagement? How does it work? But what we need to grasp tonight is simply the reality of Babylon and her temptation and the danger of it. Because point 2, we've seen Babylon the Great. And the rest of the passage shows us briefly Babylon's fate. Because what is Babylon's fate? What we see is that Babylon, for all her attraction, is going to get devoured by her own side. If you look at verse 7 with me, you can see the angel starts to explain the vision. Why are you astonished? I'll explain to you the mystery of the woman and of the beast she rides. And then the attention focuses on the beast, not on the woman. Satan's beast, with its 7 heads and 10 horns. The beast, verse 8, which you saw, once was, now is not, and yet will come up out of the abyss and go to his destruction. And that's showing us the beast is a counterfeit Jesus. Because Jesus was and is to come. And he is alive forevermore. The beast once was, now is not, and yet will come, but he's not alive forevermore. He's going to his destruction. The beast counterfeits Jesus. And once more, the people of this world marvel at the beast because he counterfeits Jesus. That's what's going on in verse 8. The inhabitants of the earth are amazed, they're astonished when they see the beast, because it once was. They're deluded by it. And then we get some detailed information about what the heads and the horns mean, verses 9 to 12. They seem to represent hills, verse 9, 7 hills, and kings, verse 10, as well. And maybe hills have a symbolic value for kingdoms there as well. Lots of folk take this very literally and think, well, the 7 hills are the 7 hills of Rome, and the 7 kings must be 7 literal Roman emperors. If you go down that road, very quickly you do get stuck, because which 7 emperors is it? When was Revelation written? And you end up trying to squidge history into fit the text, and it doesn't work very well. Better to take it symbolically. 7 being the complete representative set of rulers in Satan's employ. Most of them have passed, verse 10. 5 have fallen, 1 is, the other is not yet come. And we seem to be near the end. This could be a transhistorical portrait of human history, Old Testament and New, and the point is there's not long to go. We're mostly through. The ruler to come, verse 10, will last only a little while. And the 8th king, the beast, well, verse 11, he's going to his destruction. And the 10 kings of verse 12, 10 denoting multiplicity, just as 7 denotes completion, well, they only last 1 hour. And unless we think that's a literal hour, like Lady Jane Grey being on the throne for a stupidly short period of time, I think we have to take it to mean this is symbolically a multiplicity of rulers, but their reign is short. It is not going to last. We are in extra time in history. And though they are united and allied, verse 13, they have one purpose and will give their power and authority to the beast, they will, however, fall. Because verse 14, they will wage war against the Lamb, but the Lamb will triumph over them, because he is Lord of lords and King of kings, and with him will be his called, chosen, and faithful followers. But before the beast and all the kings go down, the beast and the kings bring about Babylon's grisly fate. Verse 16. The beast and the 10 horns you saw will hate the prostitute. They will bring her ruin and leave her naked. They will eat her flesh and burn her with fire. For God has put it into their hearts to accomplish his purpose by agreeing to hand over to the beast their royal authority until God's words are fulfilled. What is Babylon's fate? It's the fate that some suffered in the Old Testament. Stripped, burned, hated. You see that in Ezekiel 23. Her flesh is eaten, perhaps like Jezebel in the Old Testament. It's that horrible moment in the movie when the evil villain's own dogs turn on him and he is hoisted by his own petard. The powers that be, the beasts and his horns and his kings, will ravage Babylon. Her own rulers will destroy her and wreck her. The world civilization is going to be chewed up and wrecked by her own rulers. That is Babylon's fate. She has no future. You live by the sword, you die by the sword. If you play with Satan, he will end up playing with you. And if you build your world on the back of the beast, then that beast is going to throw you off. Babylon is going nowhere, because her foundations are on a monster who will destroy her. And if you think you will find happiness, prosperity, fulfillment in Babylon by making your home in her and going with her flow, you will get a nasty surprise, because God uses her kings, verse 17. He puts it in the hearts of her rulers to rule destructively and satanically, and you will find yourself in misery. Making your home in Babylon, it's like buying a house in a burning city. Babylon's fate is to be chewed up by her own side. You do not want to be part of her when that happens. So as we close, Babylon the Great suffers Babylon's fate, and therefore, isn't it far, far better to be one of those people back in verse 14 at the end? Instead of drinking Babylon's wine, side with Jesus, because he is the Lord of lords and the King of Kings, verse 14. And he will win. And with him will be his called, chosen, and faithful followers. Because look who verse 14 says Jesus is. He is the Lamb, the sacrificial Lamb, who actually cares about us and sacrificed his life on the cross to purify us from sin and make us his spotless bride. And he is the one who's going to win. Verse 14, he will triumph because he is the Lord of Lords and the King of Kings. He is this world's true king, and he's the good king, the better king, the king you'd want to be under, the king who cries, mine, over every square inch of your life. He is the king who will shortly preside over the defeat of his enemies. This is the king who is calling you to follow him. Will you be one of his called, chosen, and faithful followers, forgiven with a fresh start, and not looking back over your shoulder at the world, but with your eyes on Jesus? Whose side are you on, Babylon or the Lamb? We've ended with Jesus, so I've asked for the last song to be a song about Jesus, a children's song, but a great song for its simplicity, that it tells us the truths of verse 14. He's the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. He can heal the sick. He can calm the storm. He's the Son of God. He can save us from sin. And he calls us to follow him.